Hello and welcome back. My name is Shannon and I'm the owner and creator here at Knotted Threads Co. I'm back today to talk to you about my 3D printed template files. So template files are digital files that include almost all of the pattern pieces provided in the corresponding patterns, and they allow you to print your own templates at home. Now, before we get into all the details and features of these 3D printed template files, let me just give you a little backstory of kind of where we started and how we've gotten this far. So back in 2023, my husband and I were talking about getting a 3D printer, and I knew I wanted to get one, but I really needed to understand how I could best use it and what the things that I might want to use it for. And then it just clicked one day, and I knew that I really wanted to print templates. I wanted to have templates for my patterns that I could print or that I could get other people to print for themselves. And so that was the driving force for us to say yes. And so for the next 6 to 8 months, it was mainly focused on us having fun with it, to learn how to use it, to learn the limitations, to understand the best ways in which to use it, and how we can implement all that knowledge into these template files. So I'm going to give credit where credit's due. These pattern pieces may be made to my specifications. Alterations may have made for what I think that you, the end user, would appreciate, and I, as a sewist, also appreciate. But all of that work was done by my husband, Alex. He is the one that creates all of these template files for us. I have tried to get him to teach me how to do it here and there, and I will teach myself eventually. But right now, he's happy to be a partner in this process, and so we've had a great time creating all these and collaborating together to make these products. So the first challenge was knowing that we had to split up these pieces. Now, the average build plate that you're going to find for the average 3D printer that most consumers like you and me are using is 256 millimeters by 256 millimeters. Now, that's about a square of 10 inches. And so that means that not all of our pattern pieces will fit, and so of course we needed to split them up. Now some need to be split up into 3 pieces and some need to be split up into 2, but we needed to figure out how we would best do that. In comes my husband with this great idea of putting a hinge on them. I had some other ideas that were not good at all, so I'm very grateful for him. He innovated this, and it was just, it works perfectly for our needs, in my humble opinion. So this is the hinge mechanism that I'm talking about. You have multiple components that all nest well into one another. When it lies flat, it doesn't really go much further back than that, so it typically stays flat like this. You have a rounded edge on top, and then when you're done, you will close it, and it's nice and flush. For assembly, it's very simple. You simply place the 2 pieces right sides together. They should snap perfectly fine. You'll insert your filament, and then you'll trim it down. The tolerance is such that you should be able to easily feed your filament through and then trim it down, and the filament should stay in there. So when your filament is on your spool, it's slightly rounded. It's kind of like thread, but plastic. And so it's always wound around this bobbin, and so when you unwind it, it has a slight curve to it. Let me show you. Something like this. So when you feed it into a flat hinge, it has a slight bow to it, and that provides some tension to help keep it in there. But the big important thing with the hinges is that if you don't have perfect adhesion on your bed, it will impact your hinge's functionality. The tolerance needs to be minimal here, but as long as you had great adhesion, everything should work perfectly. I promise, my testers have done it, and the only time that they have issues is if there are adhesion issues. So definitely take some time and make sure you have your build plate temp set correctly, your filament is nice and dry, your build plate is nice and clean, and you have all your settings set correctly. I can't stress it enough, adhesion is super important for these templates. Truly, it's important for all of 3D printing, but you really need to nail that down, or else you will have some frustrating prints. That's just the way that all of 3D printing goes. I do give you some helpful tips in the little PDF that comes with the template files. We found these brims in Bamboo Studio. I'm not sure about other 3D printers if they offer this feature, but they're tiny little mouse ears or dog ears, whatever you want to call them, that go on the corners of your pieces, and they can be super helpful. for your pieces and getting good adhesion. So definitely look into that if you're having constant issues. Another feature I was adamant about was that all of the cutting edges and tracing edges on your template files will be filleted. Now, a filleted edge is where the bottom is flat, but then from that point, the rest of it rounds up, kind of like a rounded top and a flat bottom. This ensures that you have the correct shape on the bottom, but then the top kind of gets out of your way so that you can see and cut better. It also helps you avoid cutting into your template and other things like that. So it was a really nice feature, and it gives a nice look to the templates, and I just found it so helpful, and none of them will ever not have that. So far, I've been showing you the main panel for the Aries crossbody, but now I'm going to pull from the Pisces pack to show you how we kind of incorporated some different features into the templates that you can use for marking. So I've got here the flap from the Pisces pack, and you can see that there are 2 holes down here, and that's your magnet placement markings. I have made sure that these braces are out of the way so you can truly kind of see this area, which is more the ideal placement for your for fussy cutting and for your image to go on your flap. And if you'll notice that this outer edge here is pretty thick, and that's by design. When my patterns have a 3/8 inch seam allowance, I have you place your stabilizer a 1/2 inch in from that, and that's what these are. And so you can easily use those edges to draw your marks. Now, because of braces and some other things for the inner design, I did not fillet this in, I did not have Alex fillet this inner edge here, but you can still use it, and it's great for making sure that your stabilizer is centered and evenly placed. Now I can understand that when you're printing all your template files in a similar color filament, it can be a little confusing to see the different pieces, and you really don't want to accidentally cut your flap stabilizer in your exterior material and vice versa. So I have made sure that Alex changed up some of the inner designs for those stabilizer pieces. So you can see here that our stabilizer fits nicely in that 1/2 inch edge there, like that. And it has a completely different design. So that should help you differentiate between the two, but we also suggest that you print them in different color filaments to further help that. Not all pieces are hinged. If they didn't need to be, we tried to avoid it, but some of the other ones we just put the hinge on for easier storage. One exception being this one. This was the last piece to be made of the Pisces pack, and I just let him have that without the hinge. And then other pieces like this where they're small enough to where you can print them on an angle or just right on the plate without any hinges, and it's easier. Now you may be asking why we didn't create just bigger files that if you have a bigger build plate, then you could print without the hinge at all. Well, our focus was to make these more accessible. Now we understand that there are a lot of printers on the market with smaller print beds than what is available for the templates we've provided. We do want to try and backtrack and figure out a solution to break the templates further into maybe 4 pieces so that the larger pattern pieces can be made into templates as well. But we aren't there yet, and since we're not ready for it, we're not going to release it. We want to make sure that the quality of those pieces that are broken down even further match the quality of these templates as well. So when I printed one of my first templates, I sent it to one of my friends, and the feedback was initially like, they seem pretty fragile. And it was a little disheartening, but it made me kind of push further to test the limits of it and see where we needed to reinforce it and anything like that. It turns out they're actually pretty sturdy. The hinges themselves are almost solid, which means that you're not breaking a hinge. You're going to break that filament before you're going to break that hinge. But the other concern was going to be, I'm going to cut into it. It's plastic. Well, you can always chip acrylic too, but it's a lot harder than cutting into something like plastic. That filleted edge is super important in preventing this, and it really does wonders. I've never cut into my templates except for when I tried to for this video. So you have to really try to cut into it, and you can't when you're cutting perpendicular. But when you're cutting mostly parallel, if you angle your blade in, absolutely. But there's no reason why you should do that. And actually, if you cut like that on a normal basis, that's pretty dangerous, so be careful. But it is possible. They are not indestructible. but you have to really try. And I've heard feedback from many, many people that said that these templates are great and they've never experienced cutting them like that. So if you do have that feedback and you do experience that, please share that with me and I'll see how we can make them better. Now I have an old template here. This is a tester. You can see it doesn't have the text on it here, and it's made to the exact same, made and printed and everything to the exact same specifications. We were just testing for size and stuff. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you kind of what happens when you do break it. And so the easiest way to break it is to flip it back on itself, okay? And so I don't think that many people are going to do that, but if they do, okay, so you can see here, it's still perfectly fine, except for now the filament broke, which is fine. It's just a single piece of filament. So what happens when we put it back together? Can we get it back together? Sure we can. And then we just insert filament into it. Now, what happens if you break half of it? Let's say, I'm going to pull them back apart. And let's just say you do something like this. Can you? Yes, but I wouldn't call myself weak, but I would say if you're doing that, I don't know if that's on us. Now, what about for some of these other pieces with the smaller hinges? Well, we'll see. This one was one that we made some alterations to the text and added some more features, and so let's break them and see what happens. A lot easier because there aren't as many hinges there, but again, we broke our filament. We did not break our templates, and that's the important thing here. So it's awesome. Let's say you did go Hulk smash on your template. Then all you have to do is reprint a single template. You don't have to wait from me. You don't have to order a whole nother set. You don't have to pay buku money. You can just simply print that extra piece. Another question I get asked a lot is how much do they cost to print? Well, it's going to depend on a couple factors. How much your spool costs, how much you have to reprint due to adhesion issues, how much the template files cost, as well as how much your printer costs, or if you have access to a printer. If you don't have access to a printer, then there are fees involved with getting it printed at your local library. But if you already own a printer and you're only basing it on the spool cost, most pieces, like such as this main panel from the Aries, is going to cost you around $3 in filament to print. That's not bad. $3 for a single template that you can pretty much use forever and reprint as you need to. How long does it print? Well, that also depends on your printer. Not all printers are going to print at the same speed or have the same speed capability. And it really depends on your setting too. If you slow down your first layer or however, if you iron the top layer, all of those things will impact your print time. But most of them are going to range between 3 to 3.5 hours. The bigger, more complex pieces will take long. If you can fit, like the gusset here, you can fit all 3 pieces on your print bed, then this one's going to take longer to print simply because there's just a lot more stuff on the plate to print, but you only have 1 plate at a time to print, which is really nice. So another thing we get asked a lot is how much do they weigh and how should we store them? Well, your weight is going to depend on your infill settings and how much you print, but they're not heavy at all, and in comparison to acrylic templates, they are way, way lighter because it's mostly air here and it's half air in there. But for storage, normally I just use a pretty large Ziploc, but my friend Nikki Kinder recently gave me a suggestion for these mesh bags. Now, she doesn't have an affiliate link, or I promise I would have linked it, but they are a 10 by 14. You can find them on Amazon. I just bought a pack yesterday that was 24 for $18 or $17, and they'll fit everything that we need to in here. So I'm going to put all of my templates in here, and then we'll see how nicely it fits. So that's just the Aries. All right, so this one with all of these other pieces, which this is about twice the amount of pattern pieces you would normally need. Doesn't fit well because of the bulk of this, but this is a pretty big Ziploc and it holds it pretty well. And again, it's really lightweight, so it's not a bad solution. So what kind of filament should you use? That's up to you. Essentially, you can pretty much use whatever you want. We typically use PLA for all of our templates. It's affordable, it comes in lots of really cool colors, and it's really easy to use. We typically use our, I don't know how to pronounce it, but BQ, BIQU, build plate. It's the blue frostbite one. It's like a super tack sort of plate. Bamboo has them now. Or you can also use other plates such as your textured PEI plate, your cool plate, your holographic plate, things like that. They'll all work. It's just you have to know the settings that work best with the filament and the printer that you're using. So I think I've geeked out long enough about 3D printing. I really hope that you love it. There is a very small crossover between people who sew bag patterns that also purchase my patterns and also 3D prints. It's just there aren't a lot of crossovers there, but that is okay. This is a passion project for myself. It's great to be able to work with my husband in this whole ordeal, and it's a unique solution for a unique problem, and that's my favorite. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you for supporting me, and happy sewing and happy printing.